What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another critter format video. And in this video, I'm going to show off a bit more of this Exodia deck that I showed off in my last video, because I just think this is really cool. And as I said before, I think it is a great deck for beginners to the format to pick up as their first deck. And since I am a beginner to the format, I've been playing it a fair bit. In my last video, I showed off a bit more of the combo potential of this deck, getting 3 pieces to hand in one turn, enabling me to win game 1. In this video, I want to show off a bit more of the stall side of this deck, and how this deck isn't just a combo deck, it's also fairly good at locking down what the opponent can do, and stalling in a way that's very different from how stall worked in Yugi Kaiba. But before we get into that, if you like this video, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel. I've got a lot more awesome critter duels coming on the way. But before we dive into the games, let's do a quick sort of deck breakdown in case you missed my last video on this deck. So the goal of this deck, of course, is to win through the effect of Exodia the Forbidden One, having all 5 pieces of Exodia in hand. And what makes this deck so powerful is that having 2 witches and 2 Sangans to search all the pieces makes them a lot more accessible than they were in the past. In addition, things like Thunder Dragon can also thin down our deck a little bit more to make it more likely that we'll draw into the pieces we need, as well as being able to tribute off like our Sangans or Witches to get a piece to hand, or just trigger Last Will to get another recruiter out onto the field. Cards like Magician of Faith and Mask of Darkness also can help with the stall side of the deck a bit, being able to get back powerful spells and powerful traps that can keep you alive for just a little bit longer. And of course, 4 2K defenders do a great job of stalling on their own if your opponent can't find a way to out them. For the spells, we have the Power 5 spells, Change of Heart, Dark Hole, Monster Reborn, Pot of Greed, Raigeki, all incredibly strong. We have 2 Last Wills, as I mentioned before, to bring out more recruiters. We have a Fisher to act as a little bit more removal. We have 2 Swords Revealing Light to stall our opponent for a bit longer. And for the traps, we have a Mirror Force, incredibly good card if you can pull it off, clearing away your opponent's attacking monsters. 3 Solemn Judgment. This is just an incredibly versatile card. It does cost half your life points, but if you can use it to stop an opponent's big play, then it's definitely worth it. 3 Trap Hole, just to act as another form of removal on your opponent's bigger monsters. And luckily this does hit White Magical Hat, which is a bit of a threat for this deck that exists in the format. And lastly, 3 Waboku to protect our monsters and our life points. For the side deck, we are able to side into a bit of a smokescreen side here if we want it, so it goes a bit more aggressive in games 2 and 3. We've got 3 1800 beaters in the form of Law Jin and 7 colored fish. We have 2 masked sorcerers to draw us more cards. We have another Magician of Faith to get back our more powerful spell cards. A Cannon Soldier to provide a little bit of burn at the end of the game to potentially finish off our opponent. 2 more Fisher to act as more removal. 2 Heavy Storm to clear our opponent's back row so we can get in with our monsters. And also a Robin Goblin if we want to pivot into more of a hand control strategy, which can be good in the mirror match. But now that the deck breakdown is out of the way, let's dive in to the games. Okay, we've got another game against Koff 1996, who you may recognize from the last video. You may be seeing a bit more of them in the format as well going forward, as they are fairly active in the format, so it's very exciting to get to play them again. And it looks like we win the rock, paper, scissors, so we will be getting to go first here. And this is a pretty decent hand. We have 1 piece, and we also have Thunder Dragon in the opener, so we can just get 2 more Thunder Dragon from the deck, thin it down a bit. We don't really have any recruiters, which is kind of unfortunate, but we have a lot of stall options here. And Mask of Darkness is able to get back something like Waboku or Solemn Judgment if we want to use it again. So we're feeling pretty good about this. We're just going to trigger Thunder Dragon, get 2 more Thunder Dragons to hand, and then we're just going to set Solemn, set Woboku, pass back to them. You may think this is a bit of a risky play because like Mass Sorcerer exists, White Magical Hat exists. We don't really want them attacking into our life points. But if they do bring out either of those monsters, we can just activate Woboku, protect our life points that way, and then we can use Mask of Darkness to get it back on the next turn. And because we have Woboku here, we don't really care if they activate Heavy Storm. We would lose a Solemn Judgment, sure, but if we really want that Solemn Judgment back, we can get it back with Mask of Darkness. Also, forcing them to use their Heavy here means that activating Swords Revealing Light will probably buy us 3 whole turns, unless they have like a Magician of Faith or some way to get to the other Heavy Storm. So we're feeling pretty good about this board. They do have Heavy Storm, so we are going to chain Woboku here. And they're just going to set 2 and pass. So we're feeling pretty good about that. Magician of Faith is pretty great. That enables us to get back the swords if we need it. So we're just going to activate the swords now. It's a Mask of Darkness. No, it's a Masked Sorcerer. We're going to set a Mask of Darkness. The Mask of Darkness can enable us to get back one of the Woboku or the Solemn Judgment, depending on which one we think would be more useful here. And we can save the Magician of Faith in hand until the swords is gone to get that back. They're going to set another pass back to us. We draw another piece, which is pretty nice. We still don't have a Recruiter, but we already have 2 pieces in hand, and we're in a pretty good position, so we don't really need to push for anything more at this point. We are going to flip up the Mask of Darkness and use its effect. And we're going to get back the Woboku. I think that's a pretty good choice here. And we're just going to set the Woboku. And we will actually tribute summon out a Thunder Dragon here. If we can get over their Mass Sorcerer, that can be pretty good for later. So we're going to summon that out. They do have Trap Hole, unfortunately, so we will lose the Thunder Dragon. But, that isn't too big of a deal. That's the second turn on swords. We draw Change of Heart, which is pretty nice. We're going to set the Magician of Faith, since on this turn swords will expire. They're going to set 1 pass back to us. Swords is expired now. We are going to Change of Heart their new set. We figured that their old set likely isn't going to be a flip monster because they didn't flip it up to get back, like Heavy Storm or something. And we're willing to take a chance on the new one. If it's not a flip monster, we can always tribute out a Thunder Dragon to get over the Mass Sorcerer. So we're feeling pretty good about that. We do take Magician of Faith, and that's very good. Now we can get back, potentially both Change of Heart and Swords Revealing Light, which is extremely nice. We could do a play here where we get back Change of Heart with this, take their other set, flip up our Magician of Faith, activate Change of Heart again, take their Mass Sorcerer, get in for damage, also draw a card off Mass Sorcerer. We could, that's a bit too much commitment for my taste because all their monsters, except for the one we tribute out, Thunder Dragon with, will go back to their side of the field at the end of the turn, so I think that's a bit too risky for me, but it is a very funny play that we could do. So we do get back the swords, though, playing it a bit safe. We can always use Magician of Faith to get back Change of Heart later. So we do just tribute off their Magician of Faith, attack over their Mass Sorcerer, pass back to them. We don't need to activate the swords right now because we're not really at too big of a risk of them making a huge offensive push. And if they do, we do have the Woboku set. They're just going to set another pass back to us. Pot of Greed's a great draw here. And that's another very powerful spell that we can get back with Magician of Faith. So we're going to flip up Magician of Faith, add back that Pot of Greed, and just draw 2 more. This is just incredibly good. And now we have a Sangan as well. So we can set that Sangan on field and get a piece to hand later. We do attack into their Giant Soldier because it's their new set. And we aren't able to clear it, but that's okay by us. We activate swords just to see what their other set is, and then we'll just set a Sangan. We also activate swords because we want to go below 7 cards in hand. We don't really want to discard any of our cards if we don't have to. We also have a Magician of Faith in hand to get back the swords later if we need it. They're going to bring out a Sangan and just pass. We draw a Giant Soldier. Not terrible, but not the best.
We set a solemn here. I mean, we don't want to have to discard a card to hand size. They've used up one heavy already, so it's not the biggest risk in the world. And if they do Heavy Storm, we do have the Waboku to activate. We've got another Solemn, another Waboku in hand, so we wouldn't be too torn up by that turn of events. We're just going to switch everything to defense and pass back to them, though. No reason to attack into a Sangan and let them get something good. They're going to set one, pass back to us. Last Will's a pretty good draw here, but we don't quite have the capabilities to use it to win yet. We're going to think for a bit if there is a chance that we can do this, because we could crash the Sangan to their Sangan, but that only gets us one piece to hand, so we don't really want to do it. We're just going to set the other Solemn because we don't want to discard for hand size, and we can always Solemn, a Heavy Storm at this point. They're going to pass back to us. We have a third piece in hand, which means that actually there is a good chance that flip summoning the Sangan, attacking into their Sangan, and then last willing out a witch could just basically win us the game here. So that's what we're going to try to do. They do have Trap Hole for the Sangan, and we're feeling really good about that because we can just win right here now. We activate Last Will, bring out another Sangan, and we are just able to crash into their Sangan and get the final piece of Exodia. So we show them that we have Exodia, and that is the end of the game. So that game went a bit longer than the previous game that I showed off with Exodia, which, just sort of one out of nowhere, getting 3 pieces to hand in one turn. You can play the slow game with this deck. This deck plays the slow game very well. And you saw, based on our hand, we could have gone for a bunch of turns longer if we had to. Luckily, we didn't, but we could have. So this deck can very much play the long game and the short game if it needs to. But now that we've won with Exodia in Game 1, we're going to switch to our more aggressive side deck. We aren't going to side in Ramen Goblin because we don't really feel like we need the aspect of hand control. We're pretty sure they're not on Exodia. And so we're just going to proceed with the more straightforward, just aggro monsters and like mass sorcerers to draw cards. So we are going to go second here because they do get to pick. And this is a pretty good hand, not going to lie. They're just going to set 2 and pass. We're just going to bring out a Lodgin, trying to get aggressive here. We'll attack into their set. It is a Sangan, so they will be able to add a monster from deck to hand, unfortunately, but it's not the worst. We're just going to set a Solemn, set a Mirror Force, pass. Oh, I guess we're setting everything. I guess because they have a set on field, which we don't know about, we're not as scared of Heavy Storm. But if they do Heavy Storm, we do have the Solemn to protect our stuff. So we're feeling okay about that. They're just going to set one pass back to us, and we have another monster to bring out. We're just going to bring it out. And that is the other Sangan, so they will add a Witch. And we will be able to get in for 18. So we're feeling pretty good here. We do have 2 monsters on board, so board clear would be kind of rough. We do have a Solemn if we, if they do have a board clear and we want to keep our monsters on board. So it's not the worst, but they do Fisher, so we do lose our Lodgin. And they will bring out a Lodgin of their own. They're going to try crashing here, and we do let it go. I think we could have Mirror Forced, but, yeah. They're unsure if they can activate Last Will here, and if they'd activated Last Will main phase 1, then they could have. But if they'd activated Last Will main phase 1, then I would have activated Mirror Force to clear their Lodgin, so that way they wouldn't have been able to attack over the 7-colored fish. They can activate Last Will in main phase 2, but I think they choose not to, because they can't really get any additional value out of that. We draw swords, which is, okay, but not really the best right now. We're going to set Trap Hole, pass back to them. They're just going to set a Witch. Ooh, and now we've got an interesting decision to make here. We could Dark Hole their board, summon out Mass Sorcerer, and get in for some damage to try and draw a card. That might honestly be worth it, and that's what we're going to do. We Dark Hole, so they get a Lodge in the hand. We bring out Mass Sorcerer and we attack. They're going to Waboku, so we don't get the draw, unfortunately. And we're just going to pass back to them. We do have the Trap Hole to deal with the Lodge in. We also have a Mirror Force to deal with if they have like a Monster Reborn or something. So we're feeling pretty good about this. As a note, we could have solemned the Waboku to make sure that we drew a card. But, I mean, that's kind of iffy, I think. We dropped down a lot of life points. And I think we're in a good place to protect our Mass Sorcerer here. So that way we don't need to draw a card right now. They're going to bring out Witch, and we do have to think about this because, you know, Witch isn't the best trap hole. They will get a monster to hand, and, like, it's kind of unfortunate. We're going to Solemn that, actually. This way they don't get the search, and also the Witch is cleared. So, I think that's not the worst play in the world. They do have Reborn, though. So, we are going to let that go through, unfortunately. We don't want to use the other Solemn on a Reborn when we've got Mirror Force that can deal with this. We're going to think about whether we want to do Mirror Force, and we will actually do that. The reasoning here is that we do have a trap hole for whatever monster that they search out with Witch, if it's something that can beat over Mass Sorcerer. So we're feeling pretty good about that. They get back Magician of Faith, though. What spells do they? They have Reborn and Fisher, so they've got some good targets in Grave. So that's kind of unfortunate for us. They're just going to set one, pass back to us. Waboku's a pretty good draw. We're going to attack in for 9, draw a card. Ooh, Fisher's a great draw, actually. We're going to set the Waboku, pass back to them. They're going to set 2, pass back to us. We're fairly confident that's probably a Magician of Faith, which is kind of unfortunate, but we're just going to switch Mass Sorcerer to defense, pass back to them. We can always Solemn the Magician of Faith flip summon, which will prevent its effect from going through. So that might be what we're trying to do here. They do flip up the Magician of Faith, and we are going to think about that, and we will Solemn it. We don't want them to get back Reborn or Fisher. Oh, but they've got a Solemn for our Solemn. Oh, that's unfortunate. They will be able to get back a spell here. They will choose the Reborn. Kind of rough for us. They're going to Reborn back their Lodge in, and they will summon out another Lodge in. We are going to trap hole that Lodge in, because we don't really have a way to deal with both their Lodge-ins. If we activate Waboku here and then use Mass Sorcerer to attack into Magician of Faith, we do have a Fisher for their other Lodge-in. So I think that might be what we do. Yeah, we are going to Waboku. And then, ooh, Pot of Greed's very nice. We're going to Pot of Greed. Draw 2. Oh, that's pretty good too. We're going to attack into the Magician of Faith. They do have a Waboku to protect it, unfortunately. And we're just going to activate Swords, set a Waboku. If they have Heavy, we can chain Waboku. So it's not the worst thing in the world. They do have Heavy, we chain Waboku. And that uses up one of their Wabokus as well, which is kind of nice. They're going to Last Will here, Stim Pack the Lodge-in. And I think I was unclear about whether I chained Waboku here. I intended to activate Waboku by like just flipping it up on the field. And, you know, in this situation, there would be no reason why I wouldn't activate Waboku. But I think there might have been some miscommunication about that, because I didn't actually declare the effect of Waboku. So it's always good just to be as clear as possible when doing these things. For the future, you know, I'm going to actually declare Waboku when this sort of thing happens, just to make sure. Because I think they might have been trying to go for more damage to actually kill us here, but with the Stim Pack. But unfortunately, they're unable to do that. Yeah, and they're just gonna pass back to us. I mean, I think maybe they should have attacked the. Oh no, because Waboku is active, so that yeah, it's kind of a rough spot for them to be in here. But I think they probably should have switched Magician to defense. We're just going to attack in the Magician, and we will draw a card here. That's a pretty good one. We're going to Fisher away their Lodge-in, set Magician, activate Swords, pass back to them. If they have a Raigeki, that's unfortunate, of course, but we do have a monster reborn to get back, like a Lodgin or something to attack in. They're just going to set 2, pass back to us, and we are going to check to see what we've got in grave. We're going to flip up Magician of Faith, and we are going to grab the Dark Hole because this does, I think, win us the game unless they have Mirror Force, potentially. We're going to Dark Hole their board, summon out 7-colored fish, and Last Will out a Sangan, just in case they have Mirror Force. And we are just going to try to attack in with everything. And it looks like they don't have a Mirror Force. It's a 7 Tools of the Bandit. But yeah, that was a pretty good game too, I thought. I think that we both played that very well. And it was just very intense. We both got down to a very low amount of life points over the course of the game due to Solemn Judgment activations, which, you know, that is a risk of Solemn. But if you use them well, as shown here, you know, you can mitigate that risk by solemning things that actually would cause you to lose more life points or just put you in a very bad position. But I hope that this game was able to show off both the more stally side of Exodia and also show off a bit of a more interesting gameplay with this sort of aggro control-y smokescreen side. I feel like in my last video, you know, the games went very quick. This video, hopefully, they were a bit longer and, you know, you were able to get more out of them because of that. But until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.